And how does it do it? And how does it continue to do it? Because the United Nations and the organization even today, in silence, in secret, are still NGO members. Shh, don't say anything. First off, the covenant between Jehovah God and his nation was broken in 1991. The covenant was broken in 1991. That's when the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society made an oath and submitted Jehovah's nation to the United Nations. It's like, Jehovah, you must submit to the United Nations. And how do we know this? There is proof. Think of all those times in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s when we boldly spoke about Jehovah God's kingdom, when we boldly spoke about Jehovah of armies and what he would do through the kingdom of Jesus Christ. Think about what he would do to the enemies and how he would dash them. This article began their relationship. Look in your awake, volume 72, 1991. You may leaf through it. The United Nations, its quest for world peace. What is happening at the United Nations? And it gives a detail of what they're doing, what they're up to. Why the need for a league arose? Why the need for a United Nations? The United Nations, a better way? Don't let that fool you. Nowhere in here, nowhere, does it talk about the boldness of Jehovah God's kingdom. Nowhere. It's gone. Jehovah's kingdom does not appear in these 3 little articles about the United Nations. It speaks good about them. In so many ways, it throws icing over it, like icing on a cake, and speaks good about it. Nothing about the kingdom. Nothing there about the kingdom. Other articles later in newspapers would come out. Jehovah's Witnesses beat a hasty retreat after UN affiliation exposed. Then in 2004, Jehovah's Witnesses still in interfaith cooperation as an NGO. Here is the members list for Russia as an NGO. There's the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, Georgia. So who okayed this? Who said it was okay to go to what Satan had made through bloodshed and through bodies and mountains of bodies, and said it was okay to become an NGO member, or something that sounds so innocent and so, oh, they didn't do anything wrong, they did it to get a library card. No, that's not what the UN, the requirements to become an NGO. There's a lot to it. Like Hezekiah, when he showed the treasures, they had to open the books. They certainly did. They had to open the books. Here, in here, it says, the NGO should provide an audited annual financial statement conducted by a qualified independent accountant. The United Nations and an independent accountant came in to see all the treasures that belong to Jehovah God. You don't think this angered him? Do you know your God? Do you know Jehovah? Does he let it go? All the requirements to become an NGO is here, including the oath, giving an oath to the Charter of the United Nations, submitting to Satan's organization, the United Nations. It would take me forever reading it to you, but this is the booklet of member status with the United Nations. And guess who's in here? Page 2. Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York. Who are its contacts? Let's see who the contacts are. Lloyd Barry, Cito Alucino, Robert Johnson. Who are these individuals? One of them's part of the governing body. In 2000, here's the list of writing department and other personnel of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, those in the temple, those who are in there, the older ones, just as in Ezekiel's day. In pink, Cito Alucino. Service Department personnel, Patterson, New York, Robert Johnson. I do not need to say more, though there are more facts. Do you know your God, you elder kings? I speak to you most, you elder kings, because you're there in the congregations. You see everything, you hear everything, you know nothing is right. I'm speaking to you not in anger, but a plea to get out. Something is very wrong when you have all these problems. It's as Jesus says, by their fruits you will recognize it. He's not with them. So where do we go from here? More proof? This is what happens. Another letter concerning friends who were concerned about this, about the wild beast. What's the relations going on here? Dear Sister Dickerson, we are pleased to respond to you this letter, January 16, 2004, regarding the Watchtower Society's former registration with the as a non-governmental organization with the UN's Department of Information. So that you will be aware of what actually occurred, note that our involvement with the Department of Public Information as an NGO in 1991 was initially was to get research material available on health, ecological, and United Nations to have access to United Nations library facilities for use in our publications. In here they also describe that they're no longer part of the United Nations. They're no longer members of the United Nations. Oh, here's another letter. Dear brothers, because of our published allegations by opposers that we have secret links with the United Nations. Secret links. Well, in the United Nations website, there is a letter that is signed. There is a letter on the UN website, DPI NGO section, in which it states, to whom it may concern, recently the NGO section has been receiving numerous inquiries regarding an association of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York with the Department of Public Information, DPI. This organization applied for association with the DPI in 1991 and was granted association in 1992. By accepting association with DPI, the organization agreed to meet criteria for association, including support and respect for the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, and commitment and means to conduct effective information programs with its constituents and to a broader audience about UN activities. In October 2001, the main representative of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York to the United Nations, Ciro Alucino, requested termination of its association with the DPI. Following this request, the DPI made a decision to disassociate with the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York as of 9 October 2001. Of all things, it happened on October, when serious things happen. Serious events happen. Please be informed that it is a policy of the Department of Public Information of the United Nations to keep correspondence between the United Nations and NGOs associated with DPI confidential. However, please see below paragraph included in all letters sent to the NGOs approved for association in 1992. The principal purpose of the association of non-governmental organizations with the United Nations Department of Information is the redissemination of information in order to increase public understanding of the principles, activities, and achievements of the United Nations and its agencies. Consequently, it is important that you should keep us informed about your organization's information program as it relates to the United Nations, including sending us issues of your relevant publications. We're enclosing a brochure of the United Nations on non-governmental organizations, which will give you some information regarding NGO relationship. And then it gives the list of the requirements to become an NGO. Peter Hoeffel, Chief of NGO Section, Department of Public Information. Why the Department of Public Information? Why would they direct the organization or the hierarchy of the governing body into that area of redissemination? Well, for one, there are 7 million of you. You put 1 billion hours out in service. And this is what you give the people. You wake. Will our world ever change? What would you change? What must change? What will change? Well, let's see if the good old kingdom of Jehovah God is in here. Let's see if the good old kingdom of Jehovah God is on. Yeah. In fact, the United Nations agency, UN Habitat, projects that within 3 decades, one of these 3 people will live in near total despair, lacking sanitation and clean water, exposed to the imminent effects of the climate change, fueling and the spread of disease and possible pandemics. Oh, here's another one. A major investigation in 2008 of the World Health Organization, another agency of the United Nations, into the way health care is handled in rich and poor countries. And it just goes on and on and on and on. In October 2011, United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, our world is one of terrible contradictions. Plenty of food, but 1 billion people go hungry. Lavish lifestyles for a few, but poverty for too many others. Huge advances in medicine, while mothers die every day in childbirth, billions spent on weapons to kill people instead of keeping them safe. This is not Jehovah's constant feature.